Welcome to Annatude, a relationship podcast about love, friendships, and everything in between.
If you ain't no punk, holla, we want Prenup. We want Prenup.
Hello and welcome to Annatude with Anna. I'm here with probably my most prestigious guest thus far. I have a lawyer, a real life, not one of those fake TV lawyers. I have a lawyer here, Aaron Thomas. Aaron, say hello to the listeners.
Hello, listeners. Thanks for having me.
Yes, thank you for coming on my podcast that literally talks about nonsense. And then you're going to come in here and tell us some things about law. So listeners, I hope you're ready for this. So Aaron, can you tell me, your educational background and what made you decide to start practicing law? What made you go into that field?
Yeah. I'm probably one of those weird kids who wanted to be a lawyer, starting in sixth grade. The story was I was in a class where my teacher, if you got in trouble, she would put kids on trial in class. The other kids would be the jury and she'd be the judge. And, I was accused of falling asleep in class and chose to defend myself. And I got convicted by my classmates.
What was the sentence?
The sentence was either 2 days of missing recess, or I had to take home a book of letters written by my classmates to my parents and had them sign it. And I wasn't giving up recess. So I was like, yeah, I'll just take the letters home to the folks. And my parents ended up chatting with the teacher. They were friends. And she said, yeah, I think, Aaron could have a future in law. And up to that point, I'd wanted to be a comedian. And so my parents kind of latched onto that and said, being a lawyer sounds like a more
lucrative,
realistic.
Yeah. You could fall back on being a comedian, but if you have a law degree, kind of makes it easier to be a comedian. So I guess
right, plan A, plan B.
Yes. Yeah, that makes sense. Very interesting about your teacher. I am a teacher myself. So that is, I don't know if I could do that with my second graders. They probably would all convict everybody of everything, sentence them to death because they're that dramatic. But that's awesome that your teacher inspired you to do that. So where did you get your education from?
So I went to Emory University in Atlanta for college. I'm originally from Memphis, Tennessee, but came down to Atlanta. That's where I am today. And then from there, I went to Harvard Law School. I graduated from there. And
hold on, we got a record scratch. You got to brag about that. You went to Harvard, the Harvard Law School. I cannot right now. I am bowing to you. My listeners can't see, but that is amazing. How was that experience?
Thank you. It was, it was interesting. It was a weird crowd for me. I'm a product of public school in Memphis, Tennessee. The year before I went to law school, I was driving an ice cream truck, and a lot of my classmates were, clerking for senators or, doing all kinds of, prestigious, summering at the Hamptons. So it was a little bit of culture shock to go to Harvard Law School. But once I got there, it was kind of like any other school. You got the nerds, probably a higher percentage of nerds than the average school. But it was 3 years in Boston. Probably the biggest thing was it was freezing cold, and I'm from the South, so that was a challenge, right? Yeah. But it's it was worth the trip up there because. Obviously, as you can imagine, it opens doors.
If you say you're a Harvard law graduate, I'm pretty sure you can do whatever the fuck you want. Excuse my language. So yes, I am so impressed. That's amazing. Something that I'm inspired. I'm too old to go to Harvard. I don't think I would make farewell in Harvard. I probably wouldn't get accepted, but I am getting my PhD. Do you have any advice for people who are seeking higher education, like anything that you would want to tell like your younger self about getting an education?
Yeah. I mean, I think I may have like hacked the process just a little bit because, when I was researching how to get into law school, everything I read said like basically half of it is your LSAT and half of it's your GPA. And my brain thought, okay, so wait a minute, the same thing that I have to spend 4 years, busting my butt day in and day out, literally for 4 years, is worth the same thing as a test I take in like 4 or 5 hours. And so I basically dedicated a summer to just taking LSATs. And I probably
Yes.
took like 20, 30 of them in the couple months leading up to the test. And most people take between 0 and 1 practice.
Right. I think that's what I did for my SATs. I think I took one practice test and I was like, whatever I get. And then I was shocked I didn't score very well. So
Right.
that is important, just so test prepping and learning the test before you take it is probably very key, and especially getting into law school. So, well, awesome. I commend you for that. That is amazing. And so, what made you go into the direction of family law? Why didn't you go into like criminal law, or why didn't you go strictly into like environmental law? What made you decide to go into family law?
Yeah. So, it's an interesting story. I kind of stumbled into it. So, I went to law school thinking I'm just going to go work for the biggest, baddest law firm in New York and make a ton of money and, retire at 30 and, that'll be my life. And then I spent one summer working for one of those New York law firms, went to one of the biggest firms in New York and watched people work from 8 a.m. to 11 p.m. Monday through Friday, and then 8-hour days on the weekend. And I just knew that wasn't going to be my life.
No.
That couldn't be me. And so I got out of law school and had no idea what I was going to do. And I came down to Georgia and I volunteered for a little bit. And then I worked in house at a nonprofit for a couple of years. And then I realized I need to be in the courtroom. I want to do what I imagined lawyers doing when I was a kid, in the courtroom arguing cases. And so I became a public defender. So I did criminal first.
Wow.
And that was mind blowing, eye opening,
I bet.
all the things. And I spent 3 years doing that and at least I thought I got pretty good at trying cases and knowing my way around the courtroom. And that's actually how I got recruited into family law. Being a public defender was great, but those student loans weren't going anywhere and I needed to make some more money. And a law firm, buddy's wife worked for a family law firm and said, we need somebody who can go to court, on day one. And, my boss is looking for somebody. And I told him about you. And so they brought me in for an interview and, offered me like double what I was making. And I said, okay, yes, I will try family law. Yeah. And it ended up being, great. I mean, it's weird in that it's similar to criminal law. You wouldn't think, but it's somebody who's going through probably one of the toughest times that they'll ever have. And you've got to walk them through that process. And the two things that end up in court the most are criminal law and family law. And so, it was something that was still going to let me go to the courtroom. And so that was 2007 when I first started doing family law. And that's what I've been doing since then, pretty much.
That is amazing. So going back to public defending. So I just have the, knowledge I have from seeing, TV or watching like court cases on Dateline. So when you're a public defender, what is, I guess, the process of trying to represent your client, even though they most definitely might be guilty, and you trying to, get their sentence, lessened or them to be found not guilty? How do you do that? I guess what I'm trying to say is, if somebody's guilty, how do you defend them?
Yeah. No, that's a great question. I'm glad you asked, because I think a lot of people, even myself before I was a public defender, didn't really know like what is the role that, these people play. And I think a lot of what I saw my job as a public defender was, I want to make sure that these people who are broke get the same kind of defense as people who got money get.
Yes.
Nobody's mad at, the person who gets a DUI if they can afford a good lawyer and maybe, get out of something. But, you know, broke people live in a different criminal justice system, and
Yes.
they deserve the same kind of defense, the people with money get. So
That's very true. Very true. You're
that
absolutely
was
right.
that was part of it. And then, the other part, I mean, yeah, a lot of the people are guilty, but a lot of them aren't. Like, you would be shocked how many people, I'd say maybe 2/3 of the people who got charged actually got convicted of what they were charged with. And a lot of other people, some are innocent, but a lot of people are just getting overcharged,
Right.
by the cops. They just
Right.
write down everything that they possibly can.
They blinked wrong, so they were resisting arrest, and it's like, I don't know about all that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So, a lot of it, I think, is just kind of like evening the playing field for
Yes.
people who can't afford the big money lawyers, and giving people a chance to, you don't know who's going to turn out to be innocent and who's going to turn out to be guilty. So you got to do the research, you got to investigate, you got to chase down the leads, and then if it turns out somebody's guilty, then it turns to, all right, let me make sure they get the same kind of sentence that somebody with money gets.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, just doing your job is, trying to ensure that your client is represented, just like you said, like rich people are represented. So that's a great way to think of it. Cause I always watch, movies and shows, and I'm like, how could they, represent this person? They're guilty. They're but that
Right.
makes sense. It's not you saying like, oh, I support their, whatever they did, their crime or whatnot. It's, they need to have a fair playing field, like you said. So I'm glad that brings a better understanding to, what I see and what I hear from, different kinds of cases. So, going into family laws, like you said, that it is similar to criminal law, like you said, the most difficult time in somebody's life, and they need somebody to navigate the system for them. Do you ever find it difficult to find a reasonable solution to people's problems? Do you ever find it to be very difficult, your job very difficult, due to that it's such a sensitive, such a personal, deep level of, clients that you're representing?
Yeah, it is always challenging, and every case that we have is completely different, and you're talking about the most sensitive personal things in somebody's life, their money and their kids,
Yes.
for the most part. I mean, that is, and the kinds of stuff that is on the table in a family law case is the kinds of things that would be irrelevant in any other kind of case. If somebody's being charged with a crime, you can't bring up, well, what's your kid doing, or what's, how are you, are you cheating on your wife, or,
Right.
how much money are you spending, from your bank account? All the stuff that would be irrelevant in any other area of life is exactly what's relevant in, for example, like a divorce case or a custody case. And so, the challenge, I think, is to always remember that, this may be my 100th or my 1,000th divorce case that I played a role in, but for the most part, it's the person that I'm dealing with. It's their first case, or maybe it's their second, but it's the case, that is on their mind, right there, and trying to treat people with, the kind of empathy that you would want to be treated if you were going through, a difficult, super difficult situation, the breakup of a relationship that you thought was going to last forever. And on top of that, financial stress, the money that used to support one household is now going to support two.
Yes.
And your kids, who you're used to seeing every single day, you're going to see less than that. Even if you win primary custody, the other parent's going to see them sometimes, so you're not going to wake up with your kids in your, under your roof every single day. So
yeah, that is so touchy, and it's a lot. So do you find it that it, I know it's probably easier said than done, but are you able to separate your job from your personal life? Especially you have a family. So do you find it difficult to not bring that home to yours and bring the stressors of other people's relationships back home?
Yeah. Honestly, sometimes it is difficult to separate it. I mean, I think I'm lucky that my wife is also a lawyer, and
Oh, wow.
he represents, immigrant children who are coming to the country, and a lot of who are like separated from their parents. And,
Wow.
so she has also like very heartbreaking
Mm-hmm.
work that she does on a day-to-day basis. And so, bringing that home, wine helps.
Yes. Yes, that's what I tell people when they're like, how do you relax after a day of teaching? And I'm like, well, if I wasn't doing wine, I'd do something extra legal, which is probably like some kind of substance, but I'm just
Right.
alcohol. So yeah, wine helps. Absolutely.
Yeah. But we try to help each other step away from it. I mean, you can't do this kind of work forever without being able to take a break and,
Right.
have time away and vacation. Otherwise, it'll stress you out. I mean, if somebody's relationship with their kids are on the line based on what you do in their case, that's as high stress as it can
Yes,
get. And so,
absolutely.
it's difficult, but I'll probably do the same things other people try to do. I try to meditate and get on the treadmill and
Mm-hmm.
anything, like shut it off, don't bring the laptop into the bedroom,
Right.
that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I find it. I watch reality TV because I'm like, okay, my life is stressful, but these dum-dums on TV are, entertainment, and their life is way more chaotic than mine could ever be. And it's televised. So that's usually what I try to do with wine coupled, together. So yeah, that's amazing that your wife is a lawyer too. So that is great to have, somebody in the household that understands the pressures of your job and isn't like, why aren't you coming home at 7 p.m. because I wanted to make dinner. So I'm sure that, how do you guys balance your guys' relationship with such hectic schedules? I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, I think both of us are lucky in that, she works at a nonprofit that is very good about, limiting the number of hours that they work. So she's not working crazy hours, and I'm the boss in my office. So, it's really important to me that me and all my employees try to keep our work to a minimum. I mean, I don't miss dinner. I don't work late. I may put in some hours on the weekend, but even that I try to keep super limited because it is a burnout kind of job.
Right.
Uh,
And you
uh,
can't be good at your job if you're burnt out, especially when you're dealing with such sensitive, subjects such as, kids and finances. You have to be on your A game at all times. So burnout cannot happen, or else you won't be, a good player. So
for sure. And I think my wife and I appreciate each other
mhm.
more because we're not in these kinds of situations, and we're
Yes,
like,
yes.
gosh, how lucky are we?
Yeah, how lucky are we that we're not going to court and suing each other for all of our finances? I mean, that has got to give you some like perspective on, how great that's a testament to your relationship. So, and that you guys keep your family sacred and make sure that you guys are there for the important moments. So, um I was reading on your website. Can you shout out your website for the listeners who are interested in learning more about you? What is your website that you have founded?
Yeah. So I got two websites. So my main family law practice is at aaronthomaslaw.com. That's Aaron, Aaron, thomaslaw.com. And then we have an offshoot practice, it's really part of the larger family law practice, but it's a specialty site. Prenups.com is our specialty.
Okay. So let's go into prenups. Why don't have any finances? Like I don't have any liquid. Now, a quick word from our sponsors. Just kidding, I don't have any sponsors. Are you tired of hearing boring ads? I hate hearing ads, especially ones that don't apply to me, like AARP or Madison Reed to dye my hair at home. I don't dye my hair. Also, if you're tired of waiting until the next episode drops, or you want to see my beautiful face and the face of my guests, then head on over to Patreon. Patreon is a creator website where you pay a monthly subscription. You don't sign a contract or anything. You can cancel anytime. If you decide you hate Annitude and you no longer want to be an Annaholic, you can cancel. Memberships start at $2. That's right, 2 smackaroos. So head on over to patreon.com/annatudepod. That's patreon.com/annatudepod. Now let's get back to the show. Your website about prenups. Why would a person like me, who is a teacher, who makes, not that much money that somebody would want to take away, why should somebody like me get a prenup?
I am so glad you asked. So I think that there are a lot of misconceptions about prenups to begin with. Number one, I think that most people think of a prenup and you think, what comes to mind? Probably
rich people. I think Kanye West and Kim Kardashian. I'm like, absolutely. They need a prenup. They need to split up those millions accordingly.
Right. A lot of times people think, a rich person, usually like an older man, probably ugly, dating I'm
thinking Anna Nicole Smith vibes. Yeah.
Right. A young gold digger wife, maybe blonde, possibly, and got to keep the money away from the gold digger. But there's two parts to that. One is it's not how much you have when you get married. It's what you potentially have when you're breaking up. And two is, and this is what we talk about at prenups.com is, it's not, most people think about a prenup and they think it's just about planning for how you split up your assets in a divorce. And a lot of people don't realize that you can put in a prenup how you're going to handle your finances during the marriage itself. Okay. And so part of the reason that I even got into this is, I started doing family law in like 07, 08. And that was like right at like the real estate market crash and everybody's finances were in the trash, and couple after couple that were coming into my office for a divorce they were basically having money problems. Their house value had tanked, their stock portfolio had tanked. They're pointing the finger at each other. And back then I used to tell my friends, I would tell my family, like, do not get married, no matter what, like, just don't get married. Like, if you are in a relationship, you can have a big party instead of a wedding. You can wear a white dress, you can change your last name if that's your thing, if that's what you're into, but don't get married because you have no idea what you're signing up for. And even if you don't have a ton of money, just going through the divorce process itself is like something that is worth insuring against. You get insurance for a car accident, and there's like a much smaller chance that you're going to have an accident over the next 10 years than there is that you're going to get divorced if you get married. Like divorce rates are what, 40-50%?
Yes, they are out of, truly the odds are against everyone. So yes. Right.
So there's like a very good chance that it's going to happen. And the average person who goes through a contested divorce case spends $15 grand per couple. And so if you can get a prenup for a couple grand that protects against having to pay $30,000 to lawyers down the line, then it's almost just like insurance against this cost that could cause financial ruin. The same way that you get insurance to protect your house, because if a disaster strikes and your house burns down, it will financially ruin you. Yes. Same thing if you have a car accident and you hurt somebody and you don't have insurance, it's going to financially ruin you. And the same thing, you get into a divorce case, especially, if you got money, you're fine. You can afford to pay the lawyers.
Yeah.
But if you don't have a ton of money, it can financially ruin you.
Exactly.
Money more than ever.
Yes.
So.
Oh my gosh. I was just thinking too, can you change your prenup throughout the relationship, or is that not allowed?
Yeah, you can. A prenup that's done during the marriage is called a postnup. So, the nuptial is the marriage ceremony, and the agreement, prenuptial, or you can get it postnuptial. And so there are people who do it, during the marriage. We do a lot of postnups in my office. But I also like to make them kind of intuitive. So like family law basically says, if you get divorced, we're going to assume everything that you have is marital property and is up for division. And it's your responsibility to prove what's marital and what's not. And so a lot of times people figure that out in a divorce case and they're like, what do you mean I got to give her half of my retirement? That's my retirement. Or what do you mean I got to give him half the equity in the house? I've been paying the mortgage for 10 years. I owned this house before he moved in. And now he wants half the equity in this house. And so what I recommend for most couples is, all right, set up your finances in a way that makes sense. Like you've got your account, they've got their account, and you have a joint account and you pay for your joint expenses, your utilities and your rent and your insurance together. And you pay for those things from the joint account and you both contribute money to the joint account. And then you keep your separate account with your separate money. And that's where you pay for your expenses. If you go shopping with your friends, or if you go have dinner with somebody else, you pay for that from your money. And you keep things separate. And then if you want to go buy a piece of property and it's going to be your property, you just buy it in your name. If you want to buy something and it's going to be a joint invested, then you put it in joint names. And that's how you keep from there being surprises of like, oh, you had 25 grand of debt and now I'm on the hook for half of that. Yeah. And I didn't even know you had it. So a lot of it is just about having like some real honest conversations at the beginning of the relationship.
Right. So I learned that I had a relationship. I was engaged to be married, or else I would be talking to you about getting a divorce. I'd probably be thinking about hiring a divorce attorney if we did end up getting married because of finances. Do you find that's the most common, argument or most common reason for divorce is finances?
Yeah. I mean, that's what the numbers show. That's what, when they do these surveys, the number one reason for people breaking up is money issues. I think it's probably one step deeper than that. I think people divorce because of communication problems.
Right.
And the money is like a symptom, but the underlying cause is communication,
which includes honesty and all that, which includes
transparency. And one thing about a prenup is for it to be enforceable, you have to disclose all
your finances,
all your assets, all your debts to the other person. And that kind of sets the tone for your marriage. Like, let's just put it all out on the table. And otherwise people don't do it because it's like, it's taboo in our society to talk about money, right? It's rude to talk about how much you make. You can't ask somebody how much student loan debt they have, or you can't talk about how much credit card debt you have. And people have like a lot of shame associated with it.
Yes. And so that goes into the relationship of, oh, I'm so afraid that they won't love me if I have this much debt. Well, I won't love you when I find out that I also am going to be paying through my taxes, your debts. So so that was, my ex-fiance, he had child support debt that I was unaware of. And I found out after we broke up that he owed about $13,000 in child support. And it really opened my eyes because at the beginning of the relationship, he did not want to disclose like how much, debt he had or where exactly his income was coming from, which is always a red flag because I'm very transparent. I'm like, listen, I got student loans. I probably will be paying them until the day I die, but that's my only debt. I don't have any credit card debt. I don't have any medical debt, etc. And I feel like, yes, like you said, it's a communication issue where there needs to be honesty and transparency. And if you don't have that, it's going to bleed over into everything else in your relationship.
Into every other part of the relationship. That's right. That's
yes.
Right. And so, when, the idea for prenups.com really came about when I was getting married myself. So 2016, I got married later in life. And this is like the other thing about prenups is like our parents' generation got married average age of like 21. Mm-hmm. So like, of course they didn't have anything. And back then, credit cards had just come around. Student loans weren't crazy out of control. You probably only had one bank account, so it was like the analogy I like to use is it was like people who are starting a business together. They're going in from very scratch business with nothing, and they're building it from scratch. And the average couple today gets married more like age 30. And so by that time, they probably got, tens of thousands of student loan debt. They've got 4 or 5 credit cards. They got 4 or 5 bank accounts. They probably got a 401k from one of their jobs. They got a car. They might have, a house with some equity. So whereas like our parents' generation was starting a business from scratch, today, when a couple gets married, it's like you're merging 2 fully formed corporations. And you would never do something like that without some kind of written
protection.
agreement.
Yes.
Are we going to do this?
Yes.
Make it work and not have it turn into arguments. So I'm getting married in 2016, and I'm thinking, I have all this knowledge of like what doesn't work in marriages from the last 10 years of my job. How can I protect against all of those kinds of arguments on the front end? How can I just, protect against the kinds of things that I see breaking couples up all the time with my spouse? And so we sat down and wrote out our own prenup, and not just like, how are we going to split stuff in the divorce, but like, how are we going to handle money during the marriage? So for example, we have a rule where we have to discuss any purchase over $500 before we make it. We have a rule where we got to sit down every December and talk about what our retirement contributions are going to be for the upcoming year, or how much we're going to contribute to our travel budget. Like that's our big, kind of discretionary expense. So it's something that's important to both of us. So how much are we going to put towards travel? And so we just kind of down the line came up with like a list of rules for, how are we going to treat money in our relationship? We have a rule where we can't loan any money to family or friends from the joint bank account. So if somebody comes and says, Aaron, I need to borrow some money, I can be like, well, I can only let you borrow money from my personal bank account, when my accounts are set up.
Yeah.
I only got a couple hundred. So I can give you about half of that, but that's it,
Yeah.
And so, a lot of rules that we put in place that are designed to actually help us stay together. And I know it sounds crazy.
No, it prevents
that can save your marriage.
Yes, because it prevents those arguments of, you didn't tell me that you were going to buy those Louboutin shoes for $900, and it prevents these arguments from happening. And that's what a prenup sounds like. It does for every couple, and I feel like it should not be taboo that you have I hear people say like, why would they get a prenup? Do they think they're going to get divorced soon or something? Or does she think that he's going to, take her money? And it shouldn't be thought of like that. Like you said, it should be thought of like, okay, we're coming into this relationship as fully fledged businesses. Basically, let's protect our stake in our marriage, which is the business, and also prevent future arguments and petty nonsense that turns into me hating you, and then we have to get a divorce and actually use this prenup. So
yeah. I mean, again, I think it's kind of like insurance, just because you have insurance on your car doesn't mean you're going to go out and start driving reckless.
Right.
Just a prenup doesn't make you any more likely to get divorced. It just means, you got some protection in there.
And I think it just means that you're smart, because that you have things that, you both need to protect, and both need to disclose to each other as a couple. So that is great advice, especially for my generation. I feel as if a lot of, people, I came into this thinking like, I have no money, but I do. I own my own home. I have a car. I do have retirement for Roth accounts and all that. So it is, to my best interest to, disclose all of that to my future partner. And when do you think it's a good time to start talking about finances in a relationship? Do you wait, a year? Do you immediately? Because I like to do it like first week. Let's get this out of the way, because I've met some jokers that obviously don't disclose a lot of things until it's too late. So when do you think it's a good time to discuss finances?
I think earlier rather than later. I mean, I think it's kind of BS that money is so taboo that we're not allowed to talk about it. I mean, that's why a lot of people have bad financial habits, because a lot of us we're like, you didn't talk about money. You didn't ask your parents about money. And so, I learned about credit cards when I went to college, and I was like, oh, it's like free money, and the next thing I knew, I had like 3 credit cards racked up, and a crap credit score. And like, I had to learn the hard way.
Right.
You learn biology, you learn trigonometry, you learn a whole bunch of stuff in high school that, like, let's be honest, you're not going to use.
All I know is the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell.
Powerhouse.
Ask me how to do taxes.
Right. But everybody needs like basic, like,
financial literacy.
Financial literacy. And so it shouldn't be taboo at all. And, I think sooner rather than later, you don't want to fall in love and then find out that they're the kind of person who carries like 50 grand of credit card debt and only pays the minimum,
preaching to the choir. I was dating somebody that didn't even have a bank account, that he had one of those cards, like the rush cards where you like reload it. And I was like, do you have, I don't have a bank account. And I figured out it was because he had so much debt and racked up so much debt and got accounts closed. So and my thing is like, if they think that's crazy that you're asking about their finances, or that you want to be open and honest about your finances, they're probably hiding something.
Boom, red flags.
Yes. Red flags. Do not make scarves. So please pay attention to them. So, I know I got to wrap this up soon, but I just want to talk about, you having your own firm, and how do you cultivate, lawyers that align to your vision for your practice? Like, how do you find people that have the same belief system as you? Like you said, these people are coming in here at the worst possible time in their lives, and they need support to navigate the system. So how do you find people that work in your firm?
Yeah. It's a good question. I think when I started my own practice, I wanted to basically do the opposite of everything I didn't like when I was working for somebody else. And so, some of that was little stuff like, we had paper. I worked at an old school law firm. We had paper files. And if you had to work on a case, you had to like get in your car. If you had to work on the weekend, you had to drive to the office because everything was on paper and everything wasn't scanned in the system. And I was like, it's like, at the time I'm like, it's like 2013, 2014. Like, we can't scan everything in. And like,
come on now, let's
Dropbox exists today. Google Drive, and so part of it was, just kind of getting things, in a more modern, atmosphere for the work. Some of it was, like losing some of the formality. Like, my clients don't care if I'm wearing a tie every day. They care if I can like help them out in their situation. And so making things a little less formal, working fewer hours. I don't believe that you got to like miss dinner with your family to prove that you're a good employee. You can make, decent money and still have like some kind of decent life outside of your job, and make it home in time for dinner and pick your kids up from school. And so I think because I kind of built that work environment for myself, that it naturally attracted people who also had the same belief and, said, I don't need to bill, 2,500 hours a year to prove myself as a lawyer. And, I want to work with people who have a life outside of work, who have a sense of humor, who aren't boring. I mean, to do this kind of work, you got to be around people that you like. So
yeah, definitely.
So I think I'm lucky in that we've attracted cool people with a sense of humor who, we all work remotely, because if I got to stand over you to trust that you're doing the work, then
you shouldn't be working.
Yeah, I can't work with you, period.
Yeah, exactly. That makes sense. Like, you give them the freedom to, be a good employee, because they will be, because you've cultivated that culture in your firm. That's amazing. So, before I wrap this up, is there anything you want to say or any advice you have for any couples or any, buddy thinking about, becoming a, prenuptial agreement, marriage? What do you think, what would you want to say to these people who are listening?
Yeah, absolutely. So, one thing I would love to tell your listeners is go to prenups.com. I've got a free ebook on the website, 7 financial strategies for a rock solid marriage. And you don't even have to really be getting married to benefit from it. I mean, it's really for any relationship. A lot, if you're living with somebody else, you're kind of in the same boat. You got some joint finances going on. Really it's all about transparency, communication, and fairness. And those, I think, are the 3 principles that deal with, your marital finance as well as your relationship in general. Get everything out on the table, be transparent. You'll benefit from it. Your relationship will benefit from it. The trust will bleed over into other parts of your relationship. But yeah, go to prenups.com, download the free ebook, and it gives a lot more tips on there about how to manage your finances in your relationship.
Yes. So everybody, please, I implore you to at least do your research before you sign those papers and say that this is forever, because it just might not be. So, and in the words of Kanye West, I'm sure you hear this a lot. We want prenup. We want prenup. Yeah. So I ask everybody this before they go, and you can either decline to answer or you can give me the right answer. What is your favorite Britney Spears song?
I gotta go with Toxic.
That's the right answer. Ding, 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 ding. Great job. You passed the test. All right, Aaron. Well,
Boom.
Thank you so much for coming on to my little podcast to talk about these big things. Once again, go to prenups.com, everybody. Download the free ebook. Find me on social media at annatudepod, Twitter, Instagram. Email me at annatudepod@gmail.com. Do you have any social media that you wanted to shout out, or if you want to keep it private, that's fine.
Keep it private. Go to the website, prenups.com.
Yeah, just go to the website. All right. Thank you, Aaron. Have a wonderful night.
It's something that you need to have, and when she leave, she gonna leave with half. 18 years.